What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Mix Masala with TG, and this is the final part of the session with Waswo X Waswo. In this episode, the artist will focus more on the subjects that his artwork contains and how these visuals change with time from his practice photograph and how it leads to miniature paintings and so on. If you are listening to this episode for the first time, I would request the listener to have a listen to the first part and the second part of conversation with Waswo X Waswo also, in order to have a better understanding and get an idea of what we are going to talk. I hope this has been a great episode for all my listeners. I really want to thank Waswo X Waswo for giving his time in midst of his busy schedule, and especially when it was done all out of nothing, like we had no plans. I had no clue that I was going to meet up with Waswo, and everything just happened. So really want to thank Waswo and really appreciate.
Now we are getting into your work
listeners
and
listening to this session.
yeah, and about my observation. My observations are like, you. I think you depict yourself in the miniature paintings also.
Yes.
It's you, right?
Well, it started being me, and I told Rakesh in those days, I said, paint me in the miniature. I said, to make sure people understand as a foreigner, paint me in like a light suit
So
with a white hat, because I always would wear the white hat. And he added the red tie on his own.
okay.
And he also added the water bottle. The water bottle is Rakesh's invention, not mine.
Okay.
So that's become like a real symbol for me now, is the water bottle is always in my hand or near me. That was our VJ, that wasn't me, decided
Alright.
to put in the water bottle. And so he adds his own little touches, but I think eventually as time went on it became more of an everyman. It's sort of like an everyman, not even every foreigner, it could even be an Indian man. Some people say that figure could actually be an Indian man too. But he's sort of the clueless outsider, be he a foreigner or an urbanite,
Yeah, it
who
gives
is having a hard time like understanding and fitting in
Yeah.
with the locals.
I think
the
the
Desi culture.
visually also the
So-
a man wearing a suit itself is in contrast with the entire composition. It highlights that figure, and then the viewer tends to like.
In the very early miniatures, he always wore shoes too, but now he always has bare feet, which I think sort of symbolizes that he's become partially adapted to the where place he is. He's a little more grounded with his feet on the ground, and
And with your works also, I think this is again very interesting for me. Like there are certain compositions where you have like the actual miniature composition sort of thing, but then you also tend to go beyond that also. It's like you're inside a landscape and you're way over outside space, in the space. You're looking from, because you have like the globe and all these structures also
sometimes
coming
I'm
in.
in a balloon, a hot air balloon,
huh.
looking down on the landscape. There's a lot of things I want to say. Number one, when I do the photography, like I did that whole series on Gauri dancers, which is a local tribal dance that's done here at the end of the monsoon, and it's only in the district of Mewar, a little bit in northern Gujarat, and Madhya Pradesh. If I remember right, it starts the day after Rocky or something like that. But there was a lot of discussing about the names, because if you listen to like academics in Delhi, they'll say it's not Gauri, it's Gavari. It's the Gavari
they said
dance.
something like Gavari.
But nobody locally says that.
Okay.
They will either say Gavri or Gauri, and the most common pronunciation is Gauri. So I decided to go with what the villagers themselves say. The villagers themselves generally say Gauri dance, Gauri, Gauri. You know, it's more of an academics that say Gavari.
So
which I
with
think has-
Udaipur, was it like the art and culture heritage that was there that actually got you attracted?
Yeah, there were a lot of things. It was the artisans, obviously the beauty of the city, the fact that I made friends here quite easily and very early on. I developed friends in Udaipur. Yeah, the cultural of Mewar I find fascinating. They're so smart. I mean, all these lakes, you know, are man-made. They're all man-made lakes. I mean, over hundreds of years, they built an incredible system of catch basins out in the mountains that then channel through dug canals into all of these lakes and feed the lakes. I mean, it's a wonderful water retention system. I'm amazed by that. And I mean, they started work on this before they had, you know, steam shovels and things like that. It was dug by hand.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can imagine that. So I have incredible respect for the culture and the history here. And, but anyway, what I was saying is like, so the Gauri dancers are pretty straightforward portraits, and there's probably more of an emphasis on the costuming than anything else. But if you look at those Gauri dancer photos, or from the book previously, which is called Photo Walla, you look at the backdrops. The backdrops have very strong miniature elements in them. The trees are painted like miniatures. The forts are painted like miniatures. Because the person who was painting my backdrops was Dalpat Singh. And Dalpat Singh is a miniaturist. So those photographs, I like to say that those photographs could be the photographs that the man in the miniatures is taking. Because he's often taking photographs in the miniatures. And you could imagine the photo series as be the photos that he's making. It's all kind of a other world, because I think one thing that fascinates me about here is just this whole mythology. There's sort of, you know, the Rajasthan and the Mewar as it is, and then there's the mythology that swirls around this through the art of miniature painting, you know, which is a much more magical world than the reality probably. But I like that magic. So anyway, yeah, we've done different series in the miniature paintings, and one I really like, we did one in 2014, which was called Chaos in the Palace. And this was around the time where I was becoming quite upset politically. And I'd always been very much of a liberal leftist type of guy. And in 2014, I started swinging more towards the right and becoming more conservative, because I thought that the left had just gone really crazy. You know, and they really went crazy once Trump was elected. You know, they just went totally bonkers as far as I'm concerned. Not that the right doesn't have problems, they certainly do, but I think the left has its own problems now. And I felt everything was descending into chaos, so we did this series of, I think it was 16 miniature paintings, and that's when I first approached Dalpat Jingar, and I said to Dalpat, I said, I want you to paint some miniature paintings, because you know how to do this. And I found an old Persian, actually, palace. I forget what it was now, something.
A photograph?
No, it was a miniature painting done by a Persian artist. I think it was Sadi's garden or something like that, I forget now. But I said, I want you to paint this, but I want you to eliminate all the figures, just use the palace background. I want you to paint it 16, 18 times, I think it was, 18 times. And I want everyone to be the same, but everyone is different with colors. So no two will match with colors. The colors should be bright, almost like an Andy Warhol brightness. And they should all be like different colors, so no two are identical. And he did that, and he did a wonderful job. Then those went to our VJ, and we started inserting figures in them. So if you look at Chaos in the Palace, you can see books being burned, which was, you know, obviously a reference to censorship. You can see M.F. Hussein painting in flames. You can see characters that look like the Shiv Sena with their bows and arrows, which is the symbol for the Shiv Sena. You can see
So these symbols,
a lot
icons.
of symbols. There was a lot of politics in there.
Okay.
And the king is depicted as being on this very ridiculously high throne, but he's a little midget of a king who has no power, which is sort of like the emasculization that has gone on through society. And I'm up on this big structure taking his portrait in that particular thing. And actually in one of the miniatures, we did a homage to Magritte, and we had Magritte's apple in a room, which to me was very similar to our figures in these rooms. So we did Magritte's apple in a room, but we did the Carcana. So there's a bunch of Indian artists sitting on the floor and they're painting Magritte's apple again and again and again. And there's like 20 Magritte apples in there with production line, you know. And so there was a lot of societal criticism or commentary in that. There's in one of the miniatures, there's this giant peacock with this beautiful tail that fills up almost the entire room. And then in another one, you have the queen looking very vainly into a mirror, and she's wearing a dress that's made out of peacock feathers. So she's obviously killed the peacock to make a dress, you know, like this, the materialism, the abuse of the natural world, et cetera, et cetera. So they were all little elements of what I felt was going on in society that was a lot related to censorship, a lot related to just a breakdown of society. And that became a hit at the India Art Fair. It sold for too little money. My gallerist now says that she should have charged twice as much for that. You know, but anyway, it sold very quickly. And
that was when?
2014.
2014.
We worked on, I think we worked on it in 2014. I think it was exhibited at the India Art Fair in 2015, if I remember the dates right. And then we did another series that's one of my favorites. I wanted to sell it as a set, but the galleries couldn't sell it as a set. I was very disappointed, so it got broken up to some extent, because some collectors bought 5 pieces and some bought 6, but it was plates from 31 plates from George Franklin Atkinson's Curry and Rice, which was a book that this British man did, and it was so similar to our own work. It was like a satire on the Brits in India. He had done these etchings, these drawings that were printed as etchings, or actually I think they were lithographic plates, but they depicted the British in India at this hill station called Kebab, the hill station of Kebab, and it basically makes fun of the British. You know, the British just being pompous and arrogant and fat, you know, and sadly sometimes he made fun of the Indians too in that, you know, he wasn't totally politically correct for sure, but I liked the idea of what he was doing, so we took those actual little lithographs and we painted my figure into them.
I think a lot of your compositions tend to give out this idea of humor.
It was a funny series. So, you know, like the British are all at a table and they're all like drinking wine and they're all surrounded by Indian servants all attending to them. But I'm laying on the floor drinking directly out of a bottle and I'm sitting with the Indians. I'm not sitting with the foreigners, you know, things like that. We're in it. And that became quite a hit. That's one of my favorite series, actually. I was sad that it was broken up when it got sold. It should have stayed together, I think.
Why did you want to depict a character like?
Because I saw in George Franklin Atkinson, I saw myself. I thought he was doing something very similar to what I'm doing with the miniature paintings in a different way. A little less politically correct than I am. I mean, I'm thought to be politically correct, but some of his images, I would say, were just racist in the way they were depicted. But he was also poking fun at the British. So a little both ways with him. And I wanted to respond to it in some way, you know. So that happened.
And like when you had this like now in Delhi and everywhere you are doing exhibition. Even you are going abroad right now to do another exhibition in Dubai or something.
No, actually, no, yeah, we do the fairs. So we've done Art Hong Kong, and we've done Art Singapore, and we've done Art Dubai, and every year we do Art Abu Dhabi.
So how has
So
been the
that's why we're
response,
so
like-
busy, because we
Uh-huh.
have a lot of work to make. I mean, right now I'm supposed to be making new photographs actually
All right.
to get painted up for Art Singapore, and I haven't made a one. So I've got to get busy and get out to the studio and start working. I've been busy with our print sale the past week, which tends to happen every year around Diwali. I do prints of the miniature paintings,
Okay.
and then we put gold borders, real gold leaf around the edges. And that print sale has done very well for the past 2 years, so I wanted to do that again because we tend to sort of sell out on that. And,
So the originals are all done by hand, and then
yes,
you
and then they're digital prints.
Digital
But
prints.
then we put gold leaf around them. We tear the edges so they have a nice rough edge.
All right.
And then we gold leaf them like that.
Okay. Okay.
And then I have a series called Dreams of the Orientalists, which currently there's like 30 pieces in that series. They get sold as they're made. They don't have to stay together. They can stand as individual works. But
And every time when you work on a new series, you know, when like you have sets of works, right, being made.
yeah.
So every time when you're okay, how do you decide like okay, this set is actually done, and now we are going to start with a new set, you know?
Well,
with new
the
series.
Atkinson one, I knew I selected the images of his that I liked and I wanted to respond to. And so, one, I'm not even in it.
Okay.
One, Atkinson had done a print of just this very poor farmer, you know, with his bones showing almost, tending the bullock, pulling a plow. And then there was just some buildings on the side. And to me, that was very sad. And he had titled it Our Agriculturalist, which I thought he was making fun of this man. It's like, why are you making fun of this poor man? You know, I thought it was very arrogant, honestly. And so all we added to that was a couple white balloons in the sky. And then in the corner, there's the water bottle sitting, you know, to
Okay.
give a little hint like I was
Yeah.
there. And the reason I did the balloons, I want to give a feeling like the British are having a party somewhere. And this man's out struggling to produce the food for the British. So I wanted to give it some context, you know. Because I thought in that particular print, I thought Atkinson was being very racist, especially with the title he gave it, you know. But then in other prints, he's obviously making fun of the British. I mean, he depicts the British as these big fat people with their feet up in these lounge chairs, you know, the old
Yeah,
British lounge
yeah.
chairs that have those boards that swing out that hold their legs and just kind of waiting to be served their wine, you know, and whatever. And he's obviously making fun of them because
Yeah.
he doesn't depict them in a flattering manner at all. He depicts them as big bloated cows, you know. So he could like see the problems, I think.
When you look at the artworks that has been created, you don't see a lot of deconstructing of the entire miniature feel. You know, you always try to do something within the parameters of, you know, what actual miniature paintings like are done or are made. You know, so you add like, I think that is very interesting. You know, how you find space to also put these small elements but still blends in with the actual miniature.
Yeah, and you know, we did a lot of homages, and this was part of our education. And sometimes I give things to Rakesh to do just because, you know, he came from a very vernacular place. And there's a book called The Artful Life of RVJ, which doesn't have my name on the cover. It has RVJ's, and Annapurna Garamella wrote that, and it's all about Rakesh.
Okay.
And she said she wanted to do this book, but she didn't want to write it about how an American worked with an Indian artist. She wanted to write it from the standpoint how an Indian vernacular artist worked with an American. So she takes Rakesh's point of view in all of this. It's a very good book, if I say so myself. And I got sidetracked by talking about the book. I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, like the elements, you know, how you manage to fit inside within the, you know, the actual visual representation of miniature paintings.
Oh, Okay, so in that book, I brought up that book because in that book there's a lot of homages to Indian artists. So we went through a series early on, going way back to 2007, where we started doing homages to Atul Dodia, Anju Dodia, Rabin Mondal, Lalu Prasad Shaw, trying to think of some of the others that we made homages to. A. Ramachandran, who often comes to Udaipur, by the way, to paint.
Okay,
A.
he does.
Ramachandran comes here quite often. But anyway, we basically adopted their styles and turned it into a miniature painting styles of some sort and inserted myself
All right.
in some way. And I thought that was a really nice series. And Rakesh remembers it because it helped him learn about Indian contemporary art.
Okay.
So through doing those paintings, he started to understand Anju Dodia. He loves Anju Dodia now.
All right.
You know, he reveres her, you know, and so do I, actually. I think Anju Dodia is incredible. Atul Dodia is incredibly friendly and nice. I like Atul a lot. So it's...
Because sometimes it can be very hard to depict something, because now in the contemporary period there's so many ways to include visuals or imagery in your artwork. There's so many ways, collages and different techniques you can use to create a lot of mixed media.
I shy away from mixed media. I don't like things that are pasted together. That generally seems sort of a cheating way to
I remember
be
the
honest.
first time when I saw your work, I thought it looks very photographic, but maybe the artist has cut out
No,
the
we never
image,
do
and like I was just
We
thinking.
never do that, but we collage in the sense that we will take things from other people and insert it in our works. So in that homage, when we did the homage to Rabin Mondal had a wonderful image that was almost like Van Gogh's bedroom at Arles, I think it was, but Rabin just painted this lonely bed in this room in his style with those really sickly blues and sickly greens and a red and black checkered floor and a window or a door, I think it was. And we painted the same thing basically, but we inserted me inside, and there's a lizard, there's like a chipkali on the bed, a lizard, and I'm going holding my hat up high and screaming, because I see the lizard in the bed. So it's kind of a one-liner joke in a way, admittedly, but it came out very beautifully. I really like that miniature. It's beautiful. It's just a little bit of humor, and it's a homage to Rabin Mondal. I wanted to work. I mean, he's slighted in the art world. He's not given much credit these days. His prices have never gone up the way they should have. So, I mean, Ashish Anand at Delhi Art Gallery has tried to push Rabin Mondal ever since I've been in India for the past 20 years, and he doesn't seem to have much luck because the prices just don't seem to rise much. Not like prices like other artists have. So, yeah, I wanted to give a little nod. And then another thing, like after we went to Bundi, we came back and I told Rakesh, I said, I want you to paint Bundi trees, because he hadn't been painting Bundi trees.
Okay.
And so I said, we're going to do a miniature. There's going to be 3 segments. I'm going to be sleeping in each one. And each one you could do a very special Bundi tree. And I told him what trees I wanted him to paint. And then you make the background how you want, but make some beautiful background. With some elephants in the back or something. Oh, he painted such a beautiful painting. And it was really meant to be more of an exercise, just for him to practice painting trees. But he made one of the best paintings ever, and still to this day is one of our most popular paintings.
Okay.
And we called it 3 Nights in Bundi.
All right.
So it was a little document of our 3 nights in Bundi when we went and studied the miniatures.
Oh.
So there's a story behind everything we do, basically.
Collaborations happening, with every piece. I think that sort of aspect really got my attention. Managing and coming together and then producing an artwork, the final representation. It's very challenging, and For me, one, when you look at your artwork, you can see a lot of different angles that you are looking through, you know. It's not usually like, number one, also because miniature painting also has its own isometric sort of viewpoint, you know. But then because maybe the influence of photography, you have very interesting perspective. It's not like there are some artists, if you look at Amrita Shergill's painting, sometimes you will feel, you know, that she comes from a higher class. You know, her painting is always from top view,
Right.
looking down, you know, on the subjects.
Right.
You know, and yes, she's depicting the lifestyle of the common people, but there's the way of looking, you know, how she's perceiving that world. It's very different. But when it comes to your paintings, your work, I think it's like, you know, there's this equality maintained. It's not like
I like working class people because I'm a working class boy at heart still. And like, yeah, I got some money now, but at heart I'm still that working class boy from Milwaukee. You know, and it drives my gallerist a little crazy. I mean, I told Bhavna Kakar one time, I said, you know, Bhavna, you know, I can do it. I can put on the suit and tie, and I can look like the funky artist. I always keep my hat on, you know, who comes in and socialize with the socialites and go out to dinner with them and blah, blah, blah. But the truth is, it's a little difficult for me because that's not my milieu, if I'm saying that right. It's not really where I fit in. You know, I fit in at the chai shop here.
Yeah.
You understand? I fit in with my crowd of artists. That's where I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And I always feel like I have to put on a little act, and there's a superficiality that creeps in when you're with that crowd. They're not being superficial, they're being themselves maybe, because that's their circle. But for me, I feel I become a little superficial when I'm there because I don't really feel I fit into it. And I'm not saying I don't have friends in that crowd, but because I do. We have a series called the Blue Series, which Rakesh has painted, and the Blue Series is called the Blue Series because they're blue. And it's basically sky and water, almost all of them. And there's generally an island, and I'm on the island in one way or another. And a lot of it deals with isolation or loneliness or feeling
Are the
alienated in
landscapes
some way.
that are there in your painting? Because there's a lot of different structures coming in. You know, you have indoor views also in your work.
Yeah, we tried to do that.
And you have outside view, the modern structures coming up. In terms of landscape, do you go out and take photographs of vicinity and then include
I know we're not taking photographs like consciously. I obviously take clips with my mobile phone and things for reference sometimes. But I've had to train myself to observe a little more in my conceptualization.
Okay.
And I encourage Rakesh to also observe a little more. And we teach each other things. So it's like, okay, I'll give you an example. When we first started, Rakesh would paint mountains, and on top of the mountains there were little trees marching like soldiers on top of the mountain. And I would say, that is totally unnatural, that doesn't look right, you know, the trees should be more up and down, make them different looking trees, all these little trees like soldiers just doesn't look good. Then I was out with Ganpat one day, and Ganpat pointed and said, look, Chacha, Rakesh trees. And I looked, and there were mountains, and there were trees marching like little soldiers on top of the mountains. And I realized this is the real Miwari landscape, especially in the hot season when all this growth dies, and you only have certain hardy trees that are growing like that. And then I realized that Rakesh actually knows more what he's talking about than I do. But then I'll also go back to him sometimes and say, well, all your trees are looking the same, and look at this miniature painting, historical, and look at how beautiful this tree is. Why don't you give me a tree like this, you know? So we have this back and forth, you know, and sometimes I have to acquiesce to Rakesh's desire, because the way he paints miniature trees on the tops of the mountains, I now realize that's very traditional in Rajasthani miniature painting also, to paint trees like that. So he's following a tradition. He's not just a bad artist, which is the way I would interpret it at first. Like you're not playing with it enough, you know, you're not being creative enough is what would go through my mind. So we both learn things as we go, and I mean that's the way collaboration has to work. You know.
And I think as time progressed, the subject of you, like the image of you, starts to also give a different meaning to why you are there. I think in the beginning, your existence in that visual was very different to now what the meaning is.
Right. I mean, it's like I lost the shoes.
Oh.
And sometimes we paint ourselves in situations. We did one called Jolly, which we actually framed in a wooden jolly.
Okay.
And it was meant to sit on a pedestal, and you could walk around it. So one side had like the men's side of the courtyard, and it was relating to my studio in Varda, actually.
Okay.
One side was the men's side, and it showed all the men playing cards and drinking and smoking chillums and blah, blah, blah. And I'm laying there on a charpoy, and I'm just kind of drinking from a bottle with all the men, you know. And then as you walked around to the other side, you have nothing but women, and the women are all busy washing, cooking, gathering the firewood, blah, 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 which is what I've often observed in the village. That, you know, but now obviously the men go out and work in the fields too. But, you know, that dichotomy between the men at play and the women still working, you know, and that's what that was about. So things come about from observation, and then it gets expressed some way, and I tried to do it in a creative way, and I made a painting with two sides that you literally have to walk around with, and the jolly reference is to the jolly that divides the compounds, you know.
And how has the responses been, like maybe at your hometown in the US when you know
they've
with the
forgotten
work?
about me, except for a few. I mean, they don't remember me much at all. I had a few good artist friends back there. We keep a little bit in contact on Facebook, but you know, there's this character called Jimmy Von Milwaukee. It's not a real name.
Okay.
Jimmy Von Milwaukee, he was kind of a crazy man artist, and he actually owned a gallery for a while.
All right.
And so, I mean, he keeps in contact on Facebook. And then I had two wonderful friends who I really loved, Johnny Shimon and Julie Lindemann, who were antiquarian photographers. So they did the old gum bichromate photographs and, you know, the...
cyanotypes.
Yeah, the album and prints, cyanotypes, all of that. And their whole thing was being local. They documented... They had lived in the East Village in New York for a while, and they moved back to Wisconsin, and they said, we're going to be East Villagers, but we're living in the dairy state here. So they did these funky photos of like Midwestern girls dressed in their prom dress and their necklaces all dressed up for the prom, but they would pose them holding their Guernsey cow or something like that out in the field. Very nice. They were beautiful photographs. Julie unfortunately died of cancer recently. Johnny is still going.
So
I love those two.
Would you say that you're...
They were like role models for me at one time. They were role models, Johnny and Julie. Shimon and Lindemann. And they ran a gallery for a while too. They called their gallery the Neo Post Now Gallery, which I really like that name. The Neo Post Now Gallery.
So would you say that your works are political?
They can be. They're not always political. I have to be careful as a foreigner. I can't be too political here. I don't want to get kicked out of the country. You know, so I have to watch what I say and what I do, and even I have to watch what goes into the paintings.
But I think that must also help you to be more creative about, you know, expressing.
I'm not so much political in the sense that this party's better than that party. I'm more political in the sense of
the society structures.
Culture, society structures, and what. And actually, the same way I approach politics in the U.S. too.
Okay.
You know, I'm involved in the culture war, and I find it fascinating. I find both sides have some right and wrong in that culture war, but they're not even talking to each other.
Because now,
right now,
even with this current government, you know, talking about certain subjects, if anything is,
it's taboo.
Like,
and it's quite the opposite, because like here you can't talk about, well, in both places you can't talk about the power structure as it is. It just so happens that the power structure in India is right wing, the power structure in America is left wing right now. But in both places, those on the other side are afraid to speak.
They're
afraid to. And I believe free speech is integral to any society, because if you can't talk, somebody might feel they're totally right about a subject, But if you're not allowed to criticize them, you never challenge them and make them maybe rethink and maybe think, well, maybe I'm not so right as I thought I was. And I'm in discussions with people all the time, my friends, and I'll be really adamant about something I believe in, and by the time of the discussion, I have to give way a little bit and say, no, I'm not totally right. You're right about that.
Yeah.
You're right about that. You know, then that's the way it should work. That's how we come together as people.
Because for you it must be challenging because you know, even if you have been staying in India for now long time, you know, still when you go out, the native people will always have this thing in the mind, you know, like we are the original people here.
Right.
You know,
right.
you are staying here, but we are like deep rooted with the
Right,
culture
right, right,
and
right.
everything, you know. So sometimes you must be facing all this sort of.
Well, I am an outsider. I'm an outsider, and that's what I have to be. Okay, I don't speak the language. I don't speak any Indian language. Right away, that makes me an outsider. Now, I can argue that English is an official language of India, but that's a rather shallow argument, actually, you know, honestly. I understand some things about the culture because I've been here for 22 years, basically, but I don't understand the culture in totality. You know, there's so many things I don't know. I learn things every day that I didn't know before.
Even
You know,
even for
so-
me also, I'm asking this question because
Right.
yeah, I'm Indian, but I was born and brought up in a German family, and the culture at my home is very different. But it was like it was only after I left my home. I was in high school. I was around 15, 16. I left my home and started doing things by myself, and I started interacting with actual Indian students then. And before that, I was always with more of Western influence. We had a lot of foreigner friends coming at our place, and you know, things like that. So when I started realizing, oh my God, in India there's caste system.
Right.
I go outside. I go to Mumbai for my college. I was there for 1 year. They were like, you have to make an ID card for the college. So I was like, okay. I gave my documents and things like that, and then when the ID card comes in, they write Tenzin P Gopal.
Oh,
So I was like, where is this P coming from?
what's the P?
P. Then they're like, oh, that's your father's name.
Oh.
And then I was like, I don't want a P in my name. You know, you look at all my other documents.
It's
There's
not
no P
there,
there. So
right.
why are you putting it? And then the administration got really heated, and he was like, no, you have to put, this is the way, you have to include your father's name, mother's name. I was like, no, say I've come here to study. Just write the name as it is in my birth certificate and all the other, you know. Then that's when it struck me that, wow, you know, how all this caste and where you're coming from, the surname has this sort of weightage. And we never knew. Like at my home, we are just like, Tenzin Gopal. We were very multicultural. We never emphasized on like, oh, this is a Muslim, this is, no. In our home, we were practicing everything.
To me, people are people, and like,
I'm an Indian, but there was a lot of things that I did not know. I only realized when I came out of my home and then started interacting with the locals, and then you start
I
realizing.
learned, and like, when I rented this apartment, my landlord's quite nice, but I didn't know that when I rented. And I was very straightforward. I said, look, I have friends here who are Hindu, Muslim, Christian, atheist, gay. I said, if it's a problem with these people coming to my house, then I don't want to rent this place. And he said, no, your visitors are your own thing. So he just said, you know, that's not an issue, you know. So, but you have to ask, because for some people it is.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I've been in situations where people don't want you bringing a Dalit. And Jay Prakash is Dalit, and he's a good guy, and he has a key to this place. He can come in any time, because I
Okay.
totally trust him. You know, and I don't want anybody to say, oh, Jay can't do this or can't do that because he's Dalit. I mean, that's really offensive to me as well as Jay. You know, so.
Even after education and, you know, smart city and everything, the culture is still.
I read a wonderful book called Being Indian, which helped me understand a lot. And it's written by an Indian, I forget the name. But that book just explains so much. And one of the things I always remembered is it said foreigners tend to look at trust as a switch. You either trust people or you don't. You trust them, they do something untrustworthy, and you no longer trust them at all. Okay, and they said Indians trust is a gliding switch. It can be set at all different levels, you know. And it helped explain that to me because I didn't understand, like my old rickshaw wallet, Tara. How can you rip me off in the morning and not give me the change from the groceries and go out and buy a beer with it or something like that and cheat me? And then in the evening come over and expect me to give you whiskey and have a party with me. It's like you ripped me off this morning, you know. But I learned it's like, yeah, but that was just a little thing, Cha-Cha. You know, we're still friends. And it's like, oh, we are? You know? But it helped me understand, you know, the thinking. And I've actually become somewhat the same way now. Like I'll trust people on different levels.
I think this is
We should wrap it up.
wrap it up. It was an interesting session, and I think I'll be coming maybe again one more time. I don't know when, but yeah, we can then. There are certain artworks that I would want you to like do a lot more explaining, you know, about the journey of the image and things like that. But that we can do it on a
I don't
different
think you
episode.
destroyed me.
What?
I don't think you destroyed me, so you can't call this testing Gopal destroys Waswo X Waswo.
No. A lot of the times, let's say about Ghulam Muhammad Sheikh, okay, he already has a lot of biographical books, and you know, a lot of people know him also. And me as a student from MSU Baroda, I've also seen him coming all the time, you know, for exhibition and talks. Reading from books is one thing, but then when you get to interact with that person, it's a totally different level.
Yes.
You know, the way they explain the things, the way they choose their words, you know, and their emphasis on certain subjects. When you hear them talk, it's very different. That's what I'm trying to share with my listeners.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Tessin.
much. Thank you very much.
Bye. We'll do it again
We'll
sometime.
do it again
In
sometime.
the future.
After hearing Waswo's stories, it has been an inspiration for all of you to also work hard and believe in what you do. If you have any queries regarding the artist's work or about any art related subjects, you can get in touch with me through my social media pages, or you can email me at tenzingopal@gmail.com. And my dear friends, don't forget to follow my page, like and share, because I think it can spread love and happiness, you know, and supporting artists is something that we all can do. Me as an artist also, I totally understand the challenges and struggles that we all have to go through in order to make our work accepted. So many ways to convey a message or a thought or an idea. And next time when you see Waswo's work, I am 100% sure that you are going to have slightly different perspective about what he is trying to convey. Thank you very much for staying till the end. This is Mix Masala with TG, aka Funk Blue. Cheers.